I was just a junior data analyst, one of 100 faces lost in the fluorescent hum of a massive open-plan office, when I saw the little boy standing by the security turnstiles of our gleaming corporate lobby. He was a small, solitary figure in a sea of pinstriped suits and hurried footsteps. His father stood a few feet away, his back to the child, his voice a low, intense murmur into a phone pressed tightly to his ear. The boy, looking lost and overwhelmed, tried to get the attention of the security guard, but his words weren't spoken. His small hands moved in a delicate, urgent dance, a silent question that was met with a confused and impatient shrug. The guard, busy with the relentless flow of employees swiping their badges, simply pointed to a large digital sign as if that solved the problem. The boy's hands fell, his shoulders slumping in a gesture of pure dejection that felt like a physical blow. In that moment, watching him become utterly invisible in the chaos, an old, forgotten instinct rose up in me. I pushed back from my desk, my half-finished spreadsheet dissolving from my focus, and walked towards him. I had no idea that from a glass-walled conference room on the mezzanine level, the company's notoriously ruthless CEO was watching the entire exchange. I had absolutely no idea that the man on the phone was a visiting executive, and that the lonely little boy was the CEO's own son. Before we go any further, I have to ask you something. Have you ever had a skill, a part of your heart that you learned for someone you love, that felt completely out of place in your professional world? A hidden language you thought no one else would ever understand? Tell me about it in the comments below. And please subscribe for more stories about how our most personal gifts can become our greatest strengths. Now, let me take you back to a time when I believed my greatest strength was being invisible. 6 months prior, my existence could be summed up in a single word: beige. I was a junior data analyst at a massive financial firm, a company so large and impersonal that its name was a bland acronym that meant nothing and everything. My job was to be a cog in an incomprehensibly vast machine. I spent my days staring at spreadsheets, cleaning data, and generating reports that I was sure no one ever actually read. My world was a landscape of cells and formulas, a place where human stories were flattened into trend lines and demographic buckets. I sat at a small, gray desk in a sea of identical gray desks, my headphones a permanent fixture, a shield against the low murmur of corporate life. I ate lunch alone, my eyes fixed on my monitor, because the thought of navigating the social minefield of the company cafeteria was too exhausting. I hadn't always been this way. In college, I'd been a linguistics major, fascinated by the beautiful, intricate ways humans connect with each other. I loved the poetry of grammar, the music of forgotten dialects. My dream was to do fieldwork, to document endangered languages, to preserve the stories of cultures on the brink of disappearance. But the reality of academic funding and the pressure of student debt led me down a more practical path. I took a few online courses in data analytics, and my knack for patterns and structure made me good at it. So I traded the vibrant, messy world of human language for the cold, clean certainty of code. My job wasn't a passion, it was a compromise, a slow, quiet surrender of my dreams. And with each passing day in that beige office, the person I used to be felt more like a distant memory, a character from a book I'd once read. The only part of my life that held any real color, any true meaning, was a language that had no alphabet, a language spoken not with the tongue, but with the hands and the heart. My younger sister, Maya, was born with a profound hearing impairment. Growing up, I watched my parents struggle to navigate a world that wasn't built for their daughter. They were always playing catch-up, trying to learn the tools and techniques that would give Maya a voice. But for me, it was never a chore. I dove into American Sign Language with the same passion I would later apply to linguistics. It was a puzzle, a dance, a secret code that connected me to my sister in a way nothing else could. Our late-night conversations were silent symphonies of flying hands and expressive faces. I learned that ASL wasn't just a translation of spoken words, it was its own rich, nuanced language with its own grammar, its own poetry. It was a language of emotion, where the tilt of a head or the furrow of a brow could change the meaning of an entire sentence. It was the language of my love for my sister. But in the sterile, data-driven world of finance, this skill, this beautiful, intimate part of my identity, felt like a secret I had to keep. It was a fluency in a language no one else spoke, a key to a door no one else could see. It was like being able to see in color in a world that only valued black and white. The morning that would irrevocably alter the course of my life started with an oppressive sense of dread. It was the day of the quarterly shareholders' meeting. The entire building was crackling with a nervous, high-stakes energy. Executives from all over the world were flying in, and the pressure was on everyone, even the lowly data analysts, to be flawless. Our department had been working for weeks on the data packets for the presentation, and the stress had reduced all communication to clipped, frantic emails. I was on my fifth coffee before 9 a.m., my eyes burning from staring at the same chart for 3 hours, trying to find a microscopic error that my manager was convinced was there. It was in this state of heightened anxiety that I saw him, the CEO, Mr. Sterling. I had only ever seen him in corporate headshots, where he looked severe and intimidating. In person, he was even more so. He strode through the lobby like a king surveying his domain, a small entourage of anxious-looking vice presidents trailing in his wake. They were heading for the main conference room, the one with the glass walls on the mezzanine, the one we all called the fishbowl. Trailing a few steps behind them was a small boy, his son, looking utterly out of place in his school uniform. Mr. Sterling seemed to have forgotten the boy was even there. He was deep in a hushed, but clearly intense conversation with his second-in-command, and he didn't look back once. The boy stopped near the entrance, his eyes wide as he took in the overwhelming scale of the lobby, with its 3-story atrium and the constant, dizzying motion of people. A junior executive, trying to be helpful, gestured for the boy to wait by the large, uncomfortable-looking modern art sculpture near the security desk. And then he was left alone. Just a small, quiet boy in the heart of a corporate hurricane. From my desk, I had a clear view of the unfolding scene. I watched as the boy, clearly bored, tried to engage the security guard. I saw his hands start to move, and my breath caught in my throat. I recognized it instantly. The quick, inquisitive gestures. The earnest look on his face. He was asking a question. The guard, a man I knew was usually friendly, but who was now completely overwhelmed by the influx of VIPs, just looked confused. He couldn't understand. He gestured vaguely towards the bank of elevators, his expression a mixture of apology and dismissal. He had a job to do, and a lost little boy was not part of it. The boy tried again, this time with a woman rushing past, her arms full of binders. She didn't even break her stride. She just shook her head and kept moving. Person after person, my colleagues, the people I saw every day, walked right past him. They weren't being cruel. They were just busy. They were trapped in their own worlds of deadlines and stress, their vision narrowed to the next task, the next meeting. They were so focused on the machinery of the corporation that they had forgotten how to see the simple human being standing right in front of them. A hot wave of anger and sadness washed over me. I saw my sister's face in my mind, remembering all the times she had been dismissed, ignored, made to feel like an inconvenience by a world that refused to learn her language. Every instinct for self-preservation, every lesson I had learned about keeping my head down and staying invisible, told me to turn back to my spreadsheet. "It's not your problem," the voice of fear whispered. "Don't get involved. Don't draw attention to yourself. Especially not today." But then another voice, a voice that sounded a lot like the person I used to be, the person who believed in the power of connection, spoke up. "And if you don't," it asked, "who will?" That was it. That was the only push I needed. I stood up, my chair making a small, squeaking noise that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet tension of the office. My legs felt unsteady as I walked out of the analyst pen and into the wide, intimidating expanse of the lobby. It felt like crossing a border into another country. I approached the boy slowly, not wanting to startle him. He was staring at the floor, looking so defeated that it broke my heart. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were guarded, expecting another dismissal. I knelt down to his level, creating a small, safe bubble for just the two of us in the middle of the corporate storm. I offered him a tentative smile, and then I lifted my hands. "It's a pretty busy place, huh?" I signed. "A little noisy," Even when it's quiet, the boy's reaction was like watching the sun break through a thick bank of clouds. His eyes, a deep, intelligent brown, went wide with shock. A gasp escaped his lips. He looked at my hands, then at my face, and then back at my hands, as if to confirm that what he was seeing was real. And then a smile of pure, unadulterated joy erupted on his face. He signed back, his hands a blur of pent-up energy. "You know how to sign." I was asking where the bathroom was, but no one understood. For the next few minutes, the chaos of the lobby, the impending shareholders' meeting, my terrifying spreadsheet, it all disappeared. There was only this bright, funny, incredibly smart little boy. I learned his name was Sam. I learned that he was supposed to sit in his dad's office and do his homework, but he'd gotten lost. We talked about his favorite video game, and he told me a very long and complicated joke about a penguin that I didn't quite get but laughed at anyway. He signed with a fluid, expressive grace that reminded me so much of my sister. In that moment, I wasn't an analyst. I wasn't an invisible cog. I was a linguist again. I was a communicator. I was me. I was so completely lost in our silent conversation, so full of a joy I hadn't felt in years, that I didn't hear the footsteps approaching behind me. I didn't notice that the low hum of the lobby had suddenly gone quiet. A shadow fell over us, and I looked up. Standing there was Mr. Sterling, the CEO. His meeting in the fishbowl must have ended. He was not smiling. His face was a thunderous mask of authority. His eyes, cold and gray as a winter sky, were fixed on me. And I, one of his lowest-level employees, was kneeling on the floor of his lobby, not working. My blood ran cold. My mind went completely blank. This was it. I was going to be fired. In front of everyone. I'm so sorry, sir, I stammered, scrambling to my feet, my face on fire. He was lost, and I was just giving him directions. I was babbling, my professionalism completely deserting me. But Mr. Sterling wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his son. Sam, completely unfazed by my terror, ran to his father's side and began signing excitedly, his hands telling the whole story. "She helped me, Dad. She talks like me. She understood the penguin joke." Mr. Sterling watched his son, his stern expression slowly, almost imperceptibly, melting away. He placed a large, gentle hand on Sam's shoulder, a gesture of paternal love that seemed so at odds with his formidable corporate persona. Then his cold, gray eyes met mine again. I braced myself. And then he did the last thing in the world I ever expected. He brought up his own hands, and with a practiced, certain fluency that stunned me into silence, he signed 2 words. "Thank you," he then spoke, his voice not the booming baritone of a CEO, but the quiet, tired voice of a father. His aide had a family emergency this morning. "I had to bring him in," he sighed, a sound heavy with a weariness that had nothing to do with corporate profits. It's a tough environment for him. For anyone. He looked at me, and for the first time, I felt like he was actually seeing me, not just as an employee, but as a person. "What's your name?" "Clara," I said, my own voice barely a whisper. "Clara Evans." "Well, Clara Evans," he said, a hint of a smile finally touching his lips. "Thank you for making my son's day a little less tough." He then took Sam's hand, and they walked toward the private elevator bank, leaving me standing alone, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The next day, I received an email with a single line, "Mr. Sterling's office." 10 a.m. I spent the next hour convinced I was going to be formally reprimanded for my unprofessional conduct, perhaps transferred to a windowless office in the sub-basement. When I walked into his vast, intimidating office, he was not sitting behind his desk. He was standing by the window, looking down at the city below. He turned and smiled, a real, genuine smile. He didn't want to talk about data. He wanted to talk about communication. He told me he was launching a new philanthropic arm of the company, a foundation dedicated to creating educational programs for children with disabilities. It was a passion project, something he had been trying to get off the ground for years. He was looking for people to run it. Not finance people. Not marketing people. He was looking for people with a different kind of fluency, a different kind of expertise. He was looking for people who understood that the most valuable data isn't found on a spreadsheet, it's found in the human heart. He offered me a position, a chance to help build this foundation from the ground up. It was a terrifying, exhilarating, impossible opportunity. That day, I didn't just get a new job. I got my life back. The useless language I had learned from my sister became the cornerstone of my new career. I was no longer a ghost in the machine. I was an architect of connection, a builder of bridges. I had spent so long believing that I had to hide the most authentic part of myself to fit in, to be successful. But I was wrong. It was only when I had the courage to let that part of me be seen, to use my unique gift in a moment of simple human kindness, that I found my true purpose. It turns out, our greatest value is not in our ability to conform. It's in the beautiful, specific, and often hidden skills that make us who we are. And the most important work we can ever do is to have the courage to speak our own language, especially in a world that doesn't always understand.